And it's time now to take a look at what's grabbing headlines here in France and around the world. So we are joined on set by Solange Mougin. Solange, hi, thanks for coming in. So you're going to be covering, first of all, for us, this increasingly tense relationship between Russia and many Western countries over the Skripal story.
Yeah, this comes after last night's Security Council meeting with Russia over the issue, where Russia said that the UK and Western nations are playing with fire. Now, they blame, they're playing with fire because they're blaming Moscow for poisoning a former spy and his daughter. The daughter, Yulia Skripal, made her first statement to the press yesterday. She said she's doing better. The statement was released by the British police, which sort of debunks some of the fake news that Russian media has been covering after an unverified tape was released by Skripal's cousin. In it, she's purported to say that she and her father are in normal health. When, as you can see on the cover, I will not talk to Russia. In fact, she isn't speaking to the Russian media, and hospital authorities are saying that her father is still very much in critical condition.
And the British paper The Guardian then also saying that Russia has an agenda here. Yeah,
in an opinion piece in The Guardian, the paper says that Russia could have basically let the dust settle on this issue, that it would have become very quickly sort of old news. But instead, The Guardian says they have, quote, decided to fight with a propaganda and misinformation war on all fronts. Now, it's a stance that The Guardian even might say was on display in an article in RT of Russia Today. It points out, in the article, RT points out, quote, inconsistencies in British intelligence and a theater of the absurd by Theresa May's government. So you have two very different versions of the world and different versions of what happened in Salisbury last month.
Let's turn then, Solange, to Brazil, and the press there, as well as all of us all over the world, are covering that Supreme Court decision that will see Lula da Silva likely head to prison. How's that looking online?
Well, naturally, the British papers are, the Brazilian papers are talking a lot about it. It's front page news there, of course. It's front and center, as you can see, on the cover of the Brazilian daily Folha de São Paulo. Now, the French press is also widely covering this issue. The right-leaning paper Le Figaro says, with Lula heading to prison, is this the fall of a hero? The paper explains that for many in Brazil, Lula remains an icon, one that helped some 30 million Brazilians out of poverty. Now, Libération, the left-leaning paper, asked basically the same question. They say Lula, the icon behind bars. In their article, they argue that the Supreme Court's decision sends a message that this is the end of impunity in Brazil for the political elite, be they on the right or the left. They also say that if the court's verdict is disastrous for Lula and his Workers' Party, it may not mean that his popularity will go away. It could have, and that Lula could have an effect on the upcoming elections in October.
Let's take a look at the French papers then, Solange. And today there's quite a bit of focus on autism.
Yeah, this was a campaign promise of Emmanuel Macron, and it's something that he promised to help fix after reports came out, and even the Parliament said that France is way behind in helping families with autistic children and adults. Now, the Prime Minister today is coming out with the government's plan. The main goal, according to La Croix, the Christian paper, tells us, is to better accompany autistic children and to ensure that they have a place in society. Now, Libération also went with autism on its cover. You can see right there, it's a rather powerful and shocking image of a child in a box, sort of unable to, as autistic children are often unable to express their feelings and thoughts. And so Libération hopes that the government's vow to help families through research, interventions and therapy will come to fruition.
And finally, Solange, from you, you've chosen a story that is making headlines in Japan, around the world. It has to do with sumo wrestling, sexism and heart attacks. What's going on?
All three in one. This is the story according to Asahi Shimbun, the Japanese paper. Well, on April 4th, the mayor of a city in central Japan collapsed of a heart attack in a sumo ring while he was giving a speech during a sumo tournament. Female medics, female doctors, rushed in to try and help him and resuscitate him. But that's when things got tricky. The announcer announced multiple times that the women needed to get off the central ring and get off the mat. Why did they do that? Well, in Japan, traditionally, it is impure for women to be on a sumo mat. The story has gone viral, and it's a major embarrassment, considered embarrassment in some papers, and it's created a lot of discussion in Japan about the role of women in Japanese culture. Now, Kyodo News, the Japanese press agency, tells us that the Japanese Sumo Association has apologized. Also, Incidentally, a large amount of salt was put onto the sumo rink to purify it. But the good news is that the city's mayor is alive and well and recovering in hospital.
Solange, thank you. Solange Moujin there bringing us our roundup of the press. And Solange will be back a little later on this morning